it's a giant question mark, right? And I'm not saying, hey, they're going to be bad. I'm saying it's a question mark. It's one of those where you're looking at it, and I think you can look at it and sort of see the vision, right, Nick, where you can see the group coming together in a certain way.
Pay heed all who enter, and beware this podcast. That's right. This is the Pay Heed podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer. We're with Kevin Flaherty, and of course, we're brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible. Member FDIC. Today, we're going to talk a little bit of KU football. We haven't had the chance to talk about this quite yet, but Kansas has its over/under win total released. We're going to talk a little bit about that and a breakdown. I believe our final position group, right, Kevin? Safeties.
Yeah, I think that's it.
So, retroactively to the spring, we're going to talk about the safeties a little bit. We've also got a spring interview that we did a couple months ago with one of the players that you'll be able to check out later on in the show. As we're getting closer and closer to the start of football season, we're going to have some more coverage coming up next week after the conclusion of Big 12 Media Days. Kansas, Lance Leipold, and some players are going to be speaking next week. So we'll have some reactions to that and analysis of that. And that essentially, I think, as you've always told me, Kevin, after Big 12 Media Day, that is like the pseudo kickoff, so to speak, of football season. So we'll be getting underway with plenty of football coverage. And then we'll be getting into fall camp and into the regular season. So we're going to be shifting gears towards a lot more football coverage here on the show. Of course, last week, Kansas basketball picked up a couple more commitments in the transfer portal and internationally, and also just from the high school ranks. So if you want to check out those shows to hear our analysis breaking down that, you absolutely can do so. At this point, we feel like Kansas basketball is probably pretty much done for the time being. The roster is basically set, I would say, at this point. And so now it's just about getting the guys on campus, getting them together, and starting to get into their preseason preparations for the season. But of course, if there's any breaking news or anything like that, you can expect us to be talking about it as well. So we'll be keeping an eye on that also. Before we get the show started, I do want to say, if you have not, please subscribe. Apple, Spotify, if you're on audio, and on a YouTube channel. Kevin, we are so close to 1,000 subscribers that I'm going to issue a challenge.
All right.
You are the 1,000th subscriber on our YouTube channel. You will get a firm handshake from me. That's right.
Whoa.
Firm handshakes. You get a firm handshake. I don't know, Kevin. I didn't want to say what you would offer, but you get a firm handshake.
Firm handshake for Nick. I'm almost kind of hoping at this point that it's somebody a ways away, where you're going to have to put in a real effort to deliver that.
Yes,
handshake. If it's like Las Vegas or somebody who are you might get a nice trip out of the deal.
So we are very, very close. So please, all jokes aside, if you do subscribe, it would really make our days, and we would get to that 1,000 number that you've been striving for before the season. So thank you so much if you have already done so. And listen, if you want to be the 1,000 subscriber so badly, just unsubscribe and resubscribe, and maybe you'll be the 1,000th. And then you can push our numbers even higher. So if you're looking for the reward for being the 1,000th subscriber. But again, we really do appreciate those of you that have done those things. And if you subscribed on audio on Apple and Spotify, if you've left a rating and review, or if you just interacted with the show in any way, we've got plenty of people on our YouTube channel that share their comments. It's always great to read those. So thank you so much, basically, to everybody that has done those things and has really helped us grow our community here on KCSN. And we very much appreciate it. Speaking of that, Kevin actually had a real life run-in with a listener / watcher, and he said that he really enjoyed the show. So thank you for running into Kevin in the Overland Park area and giving us a shout out. Appreciate that as well. So yeah, the good vibes all around right now. So let's talk about a little bit of KU football here, Kevin, as we are getting closer to the season. We did a lot of our breakdowns of different position groups back early in the spring. We're going to talk about safeties later in the show, but kind of an interesting thought exercise that I wanted to go through with you here is earlier on in the summer, betting odds were released for over-under win totals for a lot of teams in the Big 12, every team in the Big 12. And just a couple of, we'll talk about KU here in a second, but just generally speaking, just to kind of give you a sense of how chaotic the Big 12 is on the football side, and really how there's not really a great sense of who the top dogs are versus middle of the pack and so on and so forth, is, first of all, you've got 3 teams that are all at their number 8.5 wins. Then you've got, let's see, one, two, three, four, five teams at 7.5. Then you have three more teams at 6.5. And the lowest team, the 16th team, according to the betting odds and overall no win total, is at 5.5. So all 16 teams, according to betting odds, are between 8.5 wins and 5.5 wins. I doubt there's any other league across the country where the perceived gap in the preseason of what the best team versus what the worst team is going to end up in terms of win totals is so narrow. And me, just initially, that tells me, okay, you're going to have a lot of teams that are really close together right now that a lot of people aren't really sure what position they may finish in, where they might be. I mentioned at the top of the league, the three teams that seem to be in the consensus top of it is Texas Tech, Kansas State, and Arizona State. Those are the three teams with 8.5 wins. But then Kansas, let's talk about Kansas. Kansas is at 7.5 over under win total for wins. I want to ask you two questions here, Kevin. You can kind of go out of however you want. First off, is that a fair assessment in your mind? And second off, is it realistic that Kansas could go over or under that number?
Yeah, I think it's a really fair assessment because I do think that 7-5 is in play. I also think, Nick, that 8-4 is in play, maybe even 9-3, depending on how certain things shake out. I mean, if you asked me right now, said, hey, you got to pick something right now as of this day, June 30th, 1:53 p.m., I would probably say something like 8-4. And so, the point of those betting lines, obviously, is to get action sort of on both sides of those. And so, yeah, I think 7.5 is a really good, strong sort of betting line for where Kansas can be, both in terms of where I think the team's strength is and what they can do, but also when you look at that schedule and kind of who Kansas is playing and who Kansas isn't playing, I think that's a pretty fair assessment. How about you?
The main issue that I have with this, Kevin, is going back to I mentioned the numbers being all so close together and obviously Kansas was burned by this thought process last year. Sure. I mean, we were sitting here probably on June 30th, 2024 last year talking about how the KU schedule was pretty favorable. Like they got a pretty good draw on their schedule. Like, oh, okay, great. You don't have to play some of the perceived top teams, Oklahoma State, Utah, you dodge some of the big guns. And then Kansas ended up playing like one of the most difficult schedules in the entire Big 12 with how things unfolded in the season. And I'm getting similar vibes this year to that, in that you do have a bunch of teams that are clustered together to where you may look at the conference schedule right now and say, okay, you get Kansas State at home, you get Oklahoma State at home, you get Utah at home. Like, okay, those are three pretty tough teams. You do have to go at Texas Tech, but like UCF's probably not going to be very good. I think you could have the same discussion this year that you had last year by talking yourself into saying, okay, well, this schedule could be perceived as more manageable for Kansas. But as we saw last year, that all goes out the window once you actually hit the field.
Sure.
Right. And so that's where I'm a little skeptical. Like, from specifically looking at Kansas in a vacuum, the first part of what you said, I do agree. I think that range is pretty fair. Like, I think for Kansas, like I was sitting there thinking about this, like, how would I feel if Kansas goes 7-5? I would say two things here. I would say if Kansas goes 7-5 with one of those 7 wins being against K-State, I think I would be pretty satisfied. And I mean that in the sense of, last year we kind of had to eat crow a little bit with our, and a lot of people honestly around KU with our expectations of what we hoped Kansas would be last year. And so I think this year it's only natural to be a little bit more tempered, right? And in your expectations, obviously, if Jalen Daniels coming back, but there's a lot of other questions surrounding him in terms of your lack of returning production at receiver. Obviously, we documented what Kansas went out and got in the transfer portal. You have Daniel Highshaw, who's your lead running back, but he's been injury prone throughout his career. No more Devin Neal. You look at the defense. While there are definitely some strong spots, you look at the linebacker spot. Again, we like the guys that Kansas has brought in, but it's kind of a crapshoot, right? You've got a new defensive coordinator who's never been a defensive coordinator before. You have Jim Zabrowski as your offensive coordinator, who we saw in a little bit, and we liked what we saw a little bit, but obviously he's still, I would say, a relatively new offensive coordinator. So I think it's only realistic to be tempered a bit more in the expectations of Kansas this year compared to maybe where we were last year, considering the circumstances. But yeah. So with that in mind, if Kansas goes 7-5 with a win against K-State, I think I would be pretty happy because you're going to a bowl game. You're probably not going to the the Liberty Bowl, which is that's like the only bowl I want to avoid. I don't want to go back to Liberty Bowl. Sorry. Listen, I get it. Kansas was bad for a long time. We were really excited to go to the Liberty Bowl back in 2022. I strive for more now for Kansas. I don't want to go back to Liberty Bowl. So as long as you dodge that, I'm happy. So in that scenario, I'd be pretty happy. That would obviously actually be under what the suggested win total is as well. So that's something to consider. On the flip side, like, yes, I think you could easily talk yourself into, well, okay, Jalen Daniels is coming back. He doesn't have any injury limitations really through the summer and into fall camp, at least we hope at this point. And so that should allow him to be a full go coming into the season where maybe a lot of that rust factor that we talked about last year would not hinder him as much. And if he's able to build that chemistry with the new receivers, then maybe this offense is explosive. And then maybe you look at the defense and say, okay, well, they've got a real stable of strong defensive tackles. Your favorite position group, Kevin. Yeah. They've got some guys on the edge that you feel like can be effective with Dean Miller and Justice Finkley. If the linebackers come out and play well right away, and the secondary comes together, which we'll obviously talk about safeties later on the show, then, okay, yeah, maybe you do go win 8 or 9 games in that scenario. I mean, when I look at the schedule, and obviously we'll have plenty of time, I think, leading up to the season to break down the schedule more in depth, but just sort of at first glance, you look at the non-conference and you say, okay, Fresno State and Wagner, that should be 2 wins. Missouri on the road, that's going to be a tough game. Probably could say it's a loss. Then you get West Virginia at home, Cincinnati at home, 2 games you probably could win. At UCF, at Texas Tech. Texas Tech could be tough. Kansas State, of course, we know it's a coin flip. Oklahoma State at home. A team that Kansas has historically struggled with, although they have had some good results against them in more recent memory. And then at Arizona, at Iowa State. You've beaten Iowa State 3 years in a row, but it's on the road in Ames. That's a late November game. Going to be a challenging game, I think, probably regardless. And then, of course, Utah, who is a team that I think you go back to last season, a team that everyone expected to be one of the top teams. And then obviously they had a disastrous year. And I think now this year you're coming into it with them probably being a little bit underrated, maybe even in terms of what they could be. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's a pretty fair number as well to say it's at a 7.5 in terms of wins, because I think if you ask me today to predict, like you said, Kevin, I would probably predict 7-5. So it's right. So it's a good number, I think, in terms of it's just a matter of whether or not you think that some of those things that I discussed for Kansas are going to come together quicker, and maybe that allows them to get a win against Missouri, or it allows them to get a win against Kansas State for the first time in 16 years. Maybe they can go to Ames and beat Iowa State in November. So I don't know. I guess that's just kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, the funny thing about it is, and the thing that makes the Big 12 so difficult to predict is the fact that everybody's kind of in a similar situation. You brought up Utah, right? That offensive line for Utah looks sick, and I think that they have a chance to have a really good physical defense. Devin Dampier, the quarterback transfer they brought in, if he's really good, Utah could win 10 games this year. If he's not, if they struggle at quarterback play again, they might not make a bowl. And it feels like you have a similar range for so many of these teams. You know, Baylor at 7.5 feels a little bit low for me based on the way that they ended the season, bringing back Sawyer Robertson, bringing back the running backs that they do, and a lot of the pieces that Baylor has. I think they're pretty physical up front this year. But would it really shock you if Baylor went 7-5, 8-4? TCU is another similar one, in that I think there's a chance that Josh Hoover, with the athletes around him, that they have a really good year this year. And there's also a chance that, hey, the defense doesn't click and they wind up maybe not being super great. And so you go up and down the conference, and it's kind of like that all the way through. The one thing I did really want to ask you about this, though, Nick, is I'm not saying it was a huge factor. I know some people put more weight on it than others. How big, when you look at Kansas's schedule and you look at the win total and all those things, how big do you think it is that Kansas is going to be playing actual home games again?
I think it's huge.
Yeah.
I think it's massive. I think it's going to be more of a boon than probably people would expect it to be, truthfully.
Yeah.
Because I think we talked about it last year, right? Like 40,000, 45,000 people in a 45,000 person stadium or 50,000 person stadium, it feels a lot different than 40,000 people in a 70,000 person stadium, which is basically what you were dealing with some of the games at Arrowhead, right? Like it just does. It just feels different. If it's a smaller stadium with the same number of people, the atmosphere is better. And obviously, I think it's going to create a much more of a bigger atmosphere. And I think Kansas fans, especially early in the year, are going to be really excited because it is I guess 2/3 of a new stadium, right? I mean, they're going to have to tear down the rest of it and finish the rest of it next offseason, but it is a new stadium. And I think if you've gone by it as I have in Lawrence, it's really exciting just to see it. Like I think
it's gorgeous. Like I know it's taken a few odd shots online from people who weren't going to like KU's stadium anyway. Well, but you drive by it, a photo does not do it justice, I don't think, Nate.
Well, and for the Missouri fans and the K-State fans that think they're like doing something cool, you're an idiot. The stadium it's not going to be fully done. Like, I don't understand the people coming like, oh, what does it look like that? Because it's not done. Okay. It's going to be 2/3 and then they'll do the rest after this offseason. Like, it's the best case scenario. Otherwise you'd be talking about playing 2 whole seasons away from your home stadium if you tried to just, wait until it was fully done. Right.
I think the other part that maybe we slept on at the time, Nick, and I'm not saying KU would have gone 7-5 last year if they had played at the Boot. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not going to attribute that level of success to it. Although, obviously they did lose some close games, when you look at like UNLV, for instance, playing that at Sporting versus playing that at home. I do think one of the things that maybe we slept on a little bit, Nick, was the convenience factor of getting ready to play at home, having all your facilities ready and easy to use and all the things that they had to kind of work around last year. All of a sudden, those are going to be the same conveniences for Kansas that they are for everybody else playing at home, and that you're going to be able to practice in your usual spots. Your weights are going to be right there. All of the different things that they had to kind of try and find a way to work around last year, they no longer have to work around. And even beyond that, Nick, is somebody who, got at least the base level tour of the facilities when they gave us a chance to look at the stadium a little bit. This place is built to be convenient, where they can hop from one thing to the next in a way that maybe they weren't able to as well before. And so I think when you add the amenities and all of the things that they have there, I think that's going to be another upgrade for playing at home that they didn't have last year, beyond just what happens on Saturdays in terms of which stadium you're playing in.
Something else to keep in mind is that Kansas is going to have 7 home games this year.
Yep.
4 of them are before October. They have 4 home games before October, and then they have Kansas State on October 25th, Oklahoma State November 1st, and they finish the year against Utah November 28th. But you're talking about a lot of home games early in the year as well for KU. So that when you talk about the comfort factor for Kansas, and especially for a team that has a lot of new faces, when you talk about transfers and whatnot, having that comfort ability of being able to play at home for 3-4 games early in the year, maybe that does help a little bit, right? With some of that stuff where you don't have to worry about traveling. You can just focus on getting ready, going through your game plan and everything, and then playing at home. So I don't know, something else to consider. We'll have plenty more time to break down the schedule more, talk more about it, talk more about where we think Kansas may go as we get closer to the start of the season. But we'll put a bow on that conversation for now. And finally, Kevin, we are going to conclude our position breakdowns that we started back in the spring. It's been a long time coming. We've had some breaking news. We've had a lot of KU basketball discussion to have, obviously. But our last group that we have to get to is safeties. So we'll talk a little about that and more coming up next. Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
I'm BJ Kissel, founder and CEO of KC Sports Network. Emprise Bank has been with us from the beginning. They were our first network partner, and they believed in the vision of what we were building from the start. I can't speak to any other banks or companies and how they operate, but I can tell you from personal experience and based on the growth of the network you're listening to right now, that if you have banking needs, call our friends at Emprise Bank. We've worked with so many great people there over the years, from Vicky and Aggie to Andrea, Lori, Jackie, Deb, and Aaron, and not to mention so many others that not just supported KC Sports Network, but supported our KCSN Foundation as well. But the best thing that I know is that if I have a question or a problem, no matter how dumb the question is, I know who I'm going to call and who I'm going to talk to. And I know that I'm getting an answer from someone that I can trust. And I know that person is there to help us. That's why Emprise Bank has always been and continues to be our partner in Possible. And they can be yours too. You just have to reach out. If you have a banking need, whether it's business or personal, hit me up. I will connect you directly with the same people that have helped us build KCSN. And that's our friends at Emprise Bank.
Folks, there's nothing that beats relaxing on a hot summer day and watching some baseball. And there's no simpler way to get in on the action than by downloading the Pick 6 app from DraftKings. It's crazy simple. Just pick more or less on the stats for 2 or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. And the best part, Pick 6 is available right here in Missouri. Don't miss out on the fun. Don't settle for a smaller payout. Switch to Pick 6, and right now, new customers can get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Here's what you got to do. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN for new customers to get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void where prohibited. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit. Bonus picks expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
This is the Peggy Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer, along with Kevin Flaherty. Talked about it at the start of the show. We're very close to 1,000 subscribers, and if you are that 1,000 subscriber, you'll get a firm handshake from me. That's right. I will find you. Oh, this is honestly, I shouldn't say it that way. It sounds like I'm talking about. Sounds like I'm like Liam Neeson.
You turned into Liam Neeson from Taken.
Yeah. I will find you.
Set of handshake skills. I will find you. I will shake your hand.
Yeah, I did not mean that to come off as a threat, but the point being, we are very close. And maybe if you're already watching this, or if you're listening, maybe we've already hit that number. Still subscribe. Keep that number going up. Keep going. Keep it climbing. And we really appreciate you if you have done those things. Also, if you are someone who enjoys golf or somebody who enjoys charity, be sure to check out the KCSN Charity Golf Tournament, the 4th annual. It's happening August 18th. If you want more information about it, you can check the link in the description of the show here. It's a great opportunity to meet members of KCSN. If you're somebody who maybe listens to other aspects of KCSN, our Chiefs coverage and so on and so forth, you'll see tons of KCSN personalities. Kevin and I are both planning on being there as well. It's in Creekmore, Missouri. So it should be a really fun time. And also they have great prizes that you can bid on as well. It's a really fun time. So be sure to check that out. You can even, obviously, if you want to, you can golf as well. Get yourself a team. So check that out. Use the description below in the show to check that out as well. And support KCSN, support a fantastic foundation, the KCSN Foundation, and have a good time while doing it all, with the chance to take home some cool memorabilia as well. So let's get into safeties, Kevin, because this has been a long time coming. It's been a long time coming to talk about the safety position. We talked about the other positions. This one, I do kind of want to sprinkle in like parts of it. I think maybe relevant to talk a little about the corners as well, because you're talking about the entire secondary in totality, but specifically at the safety position. I wanted to start here. So I'll throw it to you, Kevin, here in a second, but just to give a quick breakdown of what KU is working with at the safety position. Broke down to 3 categories: departures, additions, returnees. Departures: OJ Burrows, Marvin Grant, and Caleb Purdy. Additions: Lyric Rawls and Laquan Robinson. And your returnees: the Dye brothers, Devin Dye, Jalen Dye, Damani Maxon, Mason Ellis, and Taylor Davis. So that's what the room is kind of looking like right now at the top of it, essentially. So as I throw it to you, what is your assessment of this safety room? When you consider the fact that you're losing 2 guys that took a majority of the snaps from last year, but you have some young guys stepping in as well. You brought in a couple transfers. Where do you think the safeties sit as we have left spring in the rearview mirror a while ago, but now heading into fall camp?
It's a giant question mark, right? And I'm not saying, hey, they're going to be bad. I'm saying it's a question mark. It's one of those where you're looking at it, and I think you can look at it and sort of see the vision, right, Nick, where you can see the group coming together in a certain way. When you're talking about Taylor Davis, who I thought acquitted himself really well for the tough situation that he found himself in a year ago, where you had injuries, you had all these different things. All of a sudden, you're being called on in a situation where you didn't necessarily know that you were going to play that much. And he kind of got thrown into the fire, and he didn't burn. He did pretty well out there. And I thought last year was a pretty strong statement. But typically, Nick, when we see this big growth from a player, it's in that second year of knowing, hey, I've been on the field before. Here's what I really need to work on. The lights aren't quite as bright for you because you've been out there before. The Dye brothers, I would caution anybody from really looking at those two last year and feeling like, hey, this is what these guys were because of the injuries, the fact that they were banged up and everything. Both of those guys are going to be in the rotation. And so don't be surprised when they're playing a lot. And if they're able to stay healthy, I think that's obviously a really good thing, not just for depth, but they'll have a chance this fall to compete to play quite a bit. Mason Ellis is a guy that had played special teams when we saw him, kind of out there a little more in the spring with the top guys, and his role has kind of grown. And talking to some of the safeties and some of the coaches in the room, he was somebody that always got called out as not just maybe the strongest safety in the room from a strength standpoint, but also maybe the fastest, Nick. This is a guy that helped earn his KU scholarship by running in the 4.4s at KU camp when he was a high schooler coming out of Mulvane. And so the idea of having him potentially in a 2 or 3 safety group and the versatility that he could add there. Another returning guy that I did want to mention because the players talked about him a lot is Landon Nelson. He, like Mason Ellis, somebody that's played a lot of special teams. He's an important leadership cog here. You hear when the players talk about him, they talk about him in a similar way to what we discussed a year ago, Nick, with Ben Easters, right? Ben Easters was a guy that you pretty much knew, hey, this guy probably isn't going to play a ton for Kansas, but the way he carried himself, the way that he worked, the way that he led, the players still talked about him like, hey, this is an impact guy in our program because of this. Landon Nelson, is in line to play more than Ben Easters did. Obviously, you only have one quarterback on the field at a time, barring some sort of trick play, which I'm sure.
Hey, I was about to say, don't give Jim Zabrowski any ideas.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure there's a multi-quarterback package that's going to be out there. But I will say, I think he's going to play more, but at the same time, don't sleep on the leadership element that he's able to bring in. And then you mentioned the newcomers. I'm not sure that you could have gotten a better fit for this group than Lyric Rawls, somebody that has already Big 12 proven. The only real thing there is, again, injury stuff where, you're wondering, hey, if this guy holds up over the course of a full season, he's probably a plus Big 12 player that you just kind of plug and play into your secondary. And Laquan Robinson is a guy that got a lot of shout outs from his teammates for being sort of an explosive guy and somebody that could join that group. And the reason we bring up all those guys, I hate to sleep on Damani Maxson. It's just, there are so many guys there and he's a redshirt freshman. I think he's going to continue to build his way into that group because he was somebody I really liked out of high school. But you have a lot of guys, Nick, who fit different things. They have different skill sets. Taylor Davis is way different than Lyric Rawls, and Lyric Rawls is way different than Devin Dye. And so I think a lot of it is going to depend on kind of mixing and matching these guys, not just to see, hey, let's get the best safety on the field, but also whose skill sets fit together.
Yeah. And you mentioned Lyric Rawls. I agree with you 100%. That's a guy that I think was pretty much the perfect fit for what Kansas needed.
Yeah.
When you consider losing both Marvin Grant and O.J. Burroughs, and I think Lyric Rawls is more of a Marvin Grant type of safety in how he plays. And he was a guy that was a starter on an Oklahoma State team that went to the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah.
So there's no question that he is certainly qualified from an athletic standpoint to be a starter and be, as you said, a plus starter at the Big 12 level. So a fantastic addition. You mentioned Mason Ellis as well. Kevin, Mason Ellis, not just one of the fastest players in the safety room, maybe one of the fastest players on the whole team at this point.
Yeah, he can really run.
Yeah, his speed, I think, is incredibly underrated, and he's somebody that I think could see the field quite a bit more this season than what we've seen in the past season or two with him as well. So I think right now, if you were to ask for essentially a two deep at this point, I would say Lyric Rawls and Taylor Davis are probably your top two, right? Heading into the season. As you mentioned, they both have different skill sets. Rawls, I think, is very much more of a box safety type, whereas Davis can be more that rangy type of player. I mean, OJ Burroughs was a really, really fantastic safety for Kansas and did a lot of things really, really well and was very, very rangy and with his coverage ability. Brian Bullitt, I think mentioned a number of occasions that he thought OJ Burroughs was one of the best cover safeties he'd ever coached. So you're definitely going to miss something with that. But I think Davis is a solid replacement in that area with Lyric Rawls. And then I think beyond that, you look at the Dye brothers. I love that you pointed out both those guys were playing hurt pretty much the whole season. I think I'm not sure that either one of those guys had really a full game where they felt 100%. So you hope that that's not the case this year. You hope that those guys can stay healthier, and if so, I think they can have an impact as well. I mentioned Mason Ellis, who I think has a chance to get on the field more. So I think you're right, Kevin. This is a group that has a lot of different pieces that can do a lot of different things at a higher level, and it's just going to be a matter of putting it together and seeing how it can work. But for me, at least, I look at Lyric Rawls immediately and say, okay, that's a guy that needs to be on the field a significant majority of the time. I think based off of his Big 12 experience, based off of his leadership, he's a more veteran player and what he can bring. We talked to him. I think he seems like somebody that would be a great vocal guy in the room as well.
Yep.
And then I think with Taylor Davis, same deal. A guy that as you mentioned, took a huge step forward, and I think potentially could be taking another huge step forward this season. So to me, those are the two guys that have really separated themselves at the top, just from based off of what we saw in the spring and whatnot. But you're right. This is a group that's probably going to be rotating quite a bit of guys, I would have to imagine.
Yeah, and if you remember OJ Burroughs coming out of high school, he set the interceptions record at IMG Academy, which, is just a ridiculous thing. The one area where he did struggle with, and Borland also brought this up, was he wasn't a consistent tackler. And I think with Taylor Davis, you're kind of maybe getting a little bit more versatility there, and that you're not necessarily going to get him being the coverage guy that OJ Burroughs was, because he was terrific there. But you're also going to have somebody that's a lot more comfortable coming downhill and smacking a guy in the run game and really padding him up. And some of that is a difference in size, right? OJ was not a very big guy. He was a cornerback sized guy playing free safety. And so I do think that that's a part of it. I'm glad you brought up Mason Ellis, because I think Kansas is probably going to have some different packages of who sort of that third, if you want to call him a linebacker / nickel / whatever, Kansas calls him a Cinco when he's more of a defensive back. They call him a Hawk when he's a linebacker. In that spot, I think you have some real options in terms of what you can do. John Kamara is a terrific athlete at linebacker who could play out there. When it's going to be more of a third corner, it's probably going to be like Saeed Gibbs, the transfer that they got from Georgia Tech, who has all kinds of experience playing as a slot corner. And I think that when it's a safety, when they go with a third safety, that's where things kind of get interesting in this group, right? Because you have a guy like a Devin Dye that can be a little bit more of a center field type, and you can move and match some guys out there. But I think, too, you could also put somebody like a Mason Ellis out there, and he's not a linebacker, but he is a little bit bigger safety that you could have in that slot. You could also put Lyric Rawls there, put a different kind of guy next to Taylor Davis. And so I do think there's some really fascinating sort of mix and match with these guys. And I like that they've continued to build on that, Nick, with what they've done in recruiting, not just the guys who are coming in as freshmen. You have Brandon Schmelsley, who was a terrific ball player at the 8-man level at Axtell. Darian Jones coming in as well as more of that rangy, like 6'2", 180 pounds, arms to his knees type of guy. Schmelsley is a little bit thicker, has some great ball skills. And then you look at what they've done in 2026, even where I'm pretty sure Kansas will probably give J.J. Dunnigan a run at corner. But ultimately, Nick, I think he's a matchup safety. He's a guy that you can ask to do any one of about 80 billion different things at that safety position. And so in addition to this group, I like the way that they've continued to sort of build out with that safety group and continue to get different body types, different skill sets to where they can have that kind of versatility on the back end.
Well, and when you talk about mixing and matching, I think that kind of ties into really the only question mark remaining about this group, or the biggest maybe final missing piece of the puzzle, which is we don't know exactly even now what type of defense KU's going to be operating with DK McDonald, right? KU's played it pretty close to the vest in terms of what kind of scheme they might be trying to run. So as you kind of alluded to, like, it's very possible that maybe DK McDonald wants to use more of a 3 safety look, in which case that changes maybe sort of the equation on who's on the field.
He's been places where they have, like Iowa State. And so like, it's funny because Kansas was very coy this spring about what they were going to do defensively. And that includes DJ McDonald being very coy about what they were going to do, where he says, well, I've got some experience with 4 down fronts, with 3 down fronts, with 2 safeties, with 3 safeties. And so, Kansas is probably going to have to put a lot of that package out against Fresno State, because Fresno State is not an auto win. It's going to be a game that Kansas is going to have to play well in. And that may really be our first indication, Nick, is that first game of kind of what we're going to see a little bit more of this year.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, it may very well be that first game in which we do get the answer to that question, right? Like, yeah. I'm not sure, based off of what we heard in the spring, that there's going to be any additional info given in fall camp about exactly what scheme that KU is going to run defensively. And again, that as it pertains to the safety room, that could really shake up the matchups. That could really shake up how you deploy that group in terms of who's on the field more versus what position, and so on and so forth. So. Yeah, it's kind of an open-ended question, I think, at this point that unfortunately may not get answered from the outside perspective until we get to watch them in a game.
I almost guarantee, Nick, that even that first week when we get that first depth chart, that the depth chart will not reveal anything either.
That's very possible. Okay, speaking of the safeties, as we've been talking about, we did get a chance to talk to one of them earlier in the spring about his transformation in the team and about stepping up, and that's Taylor Davis. So we'll take a quick break, and then we'll hear from Taylor Davis. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
This is the paid podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer here with Kevin Flaherty. Of course, we're brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible. Member FDIC. Had a lot of great conversation there about the safety room and what Kansas has on the field in terms of X's and O's and maybe who might be playing and maybe where things go from here with Kansas heading into the season. But I also had a chance to, off the field, get a chance to chat with a couple of guys, including Taylor Davis, who we highlighted quite a bit in our last segment, talking about him stepping up last year and somebody that I think Kevin and I both expect to be in that starting conversation or taking the majority of the snaps conversation coming up this season. We had a chance to talk with him along with other members of the media earlier in the spring, and check out. Here's what he had to say.
First of all, just how's spring going so far?
Spring's been really good. We've had a couple guys step up to leadership roles like Lyric, Devin, J-Dot, people like that. Landon Nelson as well. So it's been a really good.
You mentioned Landon Nelson, obviously a guy that played for you guys in special teams. What has he shown you over the last offseason?
He's a leader. He's been a vocal leader, a physical leader. He does everything right. He's really somebody that kind of taught me the ropes coming out of high school and what to do, what not to do, what to expect from coaches and things like that.
What's it like for you kind of almost being an old man in the room, at least as far as experience goes?
Yeah, it's definitely different. The script was flipped last year, so just me learning and taking in things and trying to lead and bring people to be where they need to be.
What was that process like for you last year? Because obviously you go into the year, you've got Marvin already there, you've got OJ. I mean, did you expect, hey, at some point my number's going to get called, I'm going to be in there, or what was that like?
Yeah, Coach Shelby did a really good job, and Coach DK did a really good job preparing me just in case things happen, and thank God that I was able to have an opportunity. Guys got hurt and injured, so I had to step up, and they did a really good job preparing me for that.
Was that something that you were ready for? You feel like you were like, okay, like I'm ready to get out there?
Yes, sir.
What is it that you think this safety room, maybe what's the strength of this safety room right now?
Togetherness. I feel like we have a lot of strong individual leaders that bring us together, and we pick up each other's slack. So there's somebody slacking, we kind of tell them, hey, can you fix this, fix this? We respect a lot of everybody in that room. Everybody has respect for somebody, so we allow each other to be corrected by each other.
One of the things that the DK had mentioned was you guys have a lot of versatile guys, right? Like you've got a lot of guys that are different. You're different than Mason is. He's different than Lyric is. You know, you have a lot of different body types, different skill sets. How is that an advantage for you guys as you get ready for this?
It's an advantage because we can work on little things, like Mason can teach me something where I can teach Mason something. So our strengths kind of pick up on our weaknesses. So if somebody's lacking in this area, somebody else would help them.
What have you noticed from Robinson so far?
He is a dog. He's going to be good. He's going to be really good. We're very happy to play with him. He's a really good person. Brings energy, always smiling, always laughing. So it's really good to be around him.
As a defender, how nice is it for the pads to come on where you're not running around in shorts and a t-shirt a little bit?
Finally get to play football.
Well, I was going to say, did you guys get out and hit a little bit today?
Yeah, we thudded a little bit today. It was a really good experience.
What's the competition been like between you guys and the offense?
Yeah, Coach Leipold did a really good job of just emphasizing straining and competition and competing and never being complacent.
What have you noticed about this receiver group? A lot of new guys in there, and it seems like you guys are going back and forth, and there's a little bit of competition there.
Yeah, the receiver room definitely does bring an edge to the defense that we have to come to practice ready every day and just be locked in on the mental details of little things.
Cornerback, you got to see Jalen Todd kind of grow up in front of your eyes. Now he's kind of the old guy in that room with some younger guys. What have you seen from Jalen so far this spring?
Jalen Todd has become a leader. Even coming in his freshman year, he's always been a leader. He threw on 20 pounds. He got faster. He got bigger. He did everything the coaches wanted him to do. So he's been really progressing really well, and I'm excited to see what he does.
What have you noticed about Jaleel Hurley so far?
I'm really excited about him. He's growing and just keep growing. He's developing in the process, and we're looking forward to see what he brings.
Guys like Jameel Croft and Austin Alexander, have been in the program. Have they taken a step forward this spring?
Absolutely. Austin, I'm so proud of Austin. Austin came in. He was a freshman, obviously, but he's been working his butt off to just keep developing. So has Jameel. Jameel has been taking steps on and off the field to better himself and better his play.
How about you? Like, where do you feel like you're better than where you ended last year?
I feel like my thing last year was, of course, I kept getting better on the field and off the field, but it was just a leadership standpoint, taking that next step as leadership and advocating for the defensive room.
Was there ever any point last year when you started getting on the field more and more where you kind of looked around and you were like, man, this is wild right now?
Yeah, I would say my first start, Houston. The Houston game was like, because I'm from Houston.
Yeah.
It was it was an experience.
How so?
It was surreal. Like, I was playing with some of the guys I grew up with. It was just like, I'm really here.
What was going on the road at K-State and being out on the field in that sort of atmosphere?
Yeah, that was a really good atmosphere to be around. Me and my friends, like, it was just, you looked up and it was just everybody. Like, that's what you dream of as a little kid.
When you look at some of the transitions in your group, anyone stood out to you in their play?
Quando Robinson, obviously. Jaleel has played really good. DJ Graham. We have a bunch of, like, everybody has stood out. Everybody has held their weight. I can be honest with you with that.
Obviously, as Melo and Kobe kind of get ready for that, have you kept in touch with them and you watch what they're doing?
Of course, man. Like, those guys are my brothers. Like, out forever. Anything they need, they got for me.
Have you tapped into Lyric at all, as a guy who's played a lot of Big 12 football?
I was actually Lyric's host, so I met him before anybody did. So, like, me and Lyric are really close, and him being from a little bit up north Texas, we kind of got the same values, share the same background, so it was pretty cool.
What have your impressions been of him since you've been able to get on the field?
Leader, just like a natural born leader. Like people naturally gravitate towards him.
And for you personally, how different is it going through an offseason when you've had so much playing time the year before? Does it change your perspective on how you approach the spring and all that?
I think you can't let it change your perspective because you kind of get complacent. You kind of got to still remember that dog you had in you when you were trying to fight to the spot you were at.
Taylor, how much did last year help you getting on the field and getting snaps?
It gave me a lot of confidence coming into this next year. It gave me a sense of direction of where I was and where I needed to be. It also made me choose what I needed to do in my leadership standpoint as well and develop everybody else.
You credited DK McDonald and Brandon Shelby was getting you ready, keeping your mentality sharp for when the injuries happened and you wound up getting in. How nice is it to see those guys get promoted, at the end of last year?
It was really good. I honestly do think they deserved it fully. These guys have worked their butt off. They worked night and day to make sure that we have what we need, extra meetings, anything that we need, they're always on hand.
Is DK different as a defensive coordinator than he was as a position coach?
Same guy. That dude is the same guy every day.
Tell us about Brandon Shelby. What do you see from him?
Coach Shelby. So Coach Shelby, even though he wasn't the position coach last year, he still coached us a lot. So the transition was really smooth. We were still familiar with him. He's been really good. He's picked up some of the stuff Coach DK has done as well, with adding stuff as well. So we're really happy to have him.
A lot of transfers in at linebacker. What have you seen from them early on?
They're dogs. Very physical, very fast. Right now it's just getting them in the playbook, learning everything. They're still here, so they're really transforming pretty well.
That was Taylor Davis, Kansas safety, speaking with members of the media and us earlier in the spring during spring football about his process and getting to where he is now, and again, hopefully taking another step forward and playing more coming up this season. And Kevin, we did it. We finished our position breakdowns. It only took us till the end of June to do so. And obviously some things have changed. So we're going to have to talk more about different position groups. Some position groups ended up adding guys via the transfer portal in the spring. So we'll have more to break down and more to talk about and more to gear up with KU football. We'll also take a deeper dive into the KU football schedule coming up later on as we get closer to the start of the season. As I'm curious what our preseason predictions will be, because we last year both were very bullish. And I think like so many KU fans probably had to eat a little bit of crow on that one. And with kind of how the season unfolded with some tight losses, but so we'll see what Kevin and I's expectations are heading into 2025. So you want to keep on the lookout for that. Mentioned earlier in the show as well that next week will be Big 12 Media Days down in Texas. We'll have reaction to everything the Lance Leipold and the players say from there, talking about that. So be on the lookout for that a little bit more later on next week. And also, if you are looking into wanting to know more about what happened with KU basketball, you can check out any of our previous episodes from last week talking about the new commitments that Kansas got and much, much more, as we'll be talking more KU basketball as the news continues to come out. Although at this point, we think their roster is pretty much set. So you can check out our previous shows talking about the latest additions that Kansas has added and with their roster being basically finalized. In the meantime, I'm going to go on vacation for 4th of July. So you won't hear from me too much the rest of this week. I'm going to go enjoy myself a little bit of vacation before we gear up for the season. I mean, this is the time to do it before we gear up for the season. So that's about wrap it up for this show. Kevin, you got anything else you want to add for our great listeners?
No, I think just generally looking at the safety group, it is a group that you can see a path forward, right? You can see a path where Lyric Rawls is a plus Big 12 starter, where Taylor Davis takes that step forward and is a plus Big 12 starter. And then with the depth in this group that they're able to fill in that third spot and even have some guys below them, it's just a question of them doing it on the football field. And that's something that we'll see this group but sort of come together. I think this is a group that's probably going to be a lot better in November than they are in September.
Yeah, and I think that statement that you just made there at the end could be true of a lot of position groups potentially for Kansas when you consider some of the new faces they have around the team. So regardless, should be a lot of fun. We're more than excited to get back into the booth, as I'm sure many KU fans are as well, to check out the new aspects of it. It's a very, very exciting time in Lawrence coming into the 2025 season. But until next time, he's Kevin Flaherty. I'm Nick Springer, and we'll talk to you again very soon. See ya.